Well, here we are in high summer. It's baking here in Switzerland, so let me welcome you to a very warm, muggy, pre-thunderstorm edition of the Haiku P podcast, with a slightly discombobulated Patricia. It's too hot for me. This week, I promised you something on verbs, which I'll get to in a minute. I'll give you a quick update on the Renku, and then we'll hear a little more from our contributors, this time Norm Keki from the US. But first, I'd like to return briefly to episode 13, Unseen and Unheard. Thank you to everyone who emailed me about the episode. I'm always grateful to have your feedback. And I'd just like to talk about one comment that suggested that what I was saying could have come across as me blaming readers for being too superficial. Well, I know I definitely have my superficial moments. My brother often chastises me for it. But in this instance, it was not my intention. It was more a plea to give our wonderful little verses some time and space, and to enjoy not just the meaning of them if you can, but also the construction and the rhythm of them. It takes but an instant to read them, and yet there is so much underlying each and every one of them. And so to verbs in haiku. Remember, this is only an opinion, one I have at the moment. I don't believe that thinking or opinions necessarily stand still, and so as I learn and discuss these ideas with you, my opinions may develop and change. If you have any thoughts, please let me know. I welcome a good old debate. Let's not forget that there are pretty much no rules in contemporary English haiku, yet as many of you will know, I have a thing about verbs. By which I mean verbs functioning as verbs as opposed to those functioning as adjectives, etc. Given my usual style, 3 lines with a juxtaposition, I aspire to write verses without verbs. I don't regard it as a personal failure if I use one verb, but my brow creases when I see 2 in one of my verses, when both are being used as verbs, that is. If there are 2 functioning verbs, the piece must be reworked or rejected. I had a crisis recently when I was thinking about my aversion. Was I just making up this principle, or was there some basis in scholarship to support me? I began to research the topic, only to find that there's very little written on it. Much appears to be made of the phrase that haiku is the poetry of nouns, seemingly because of Basho's Hoku's tendency to rely primarily on images rather than statement. Does this mean that by extension verbs are frowned upon? Well, no, I don't think so really. First of all, I should say that the number of functioning verbs in a verse may depend on the type of verse you write, on your style, on your form. A 3-image haiku, for example, you don't see many of them, but it is feasible that they would have 3 verbs. Reading a blog post by Alan Summers, he wonders if, as a practice, verbs are required to be unobtrusive. And yet, as he also says, verbs can bring out astounding juxtaposition. And he quotes this verse from Alan Burns' book Earthlings to illustrate the astounding juxtaposition. The caged chimpanzee injected with hepatitis signs hello. Now this view of verbs is echoed by others such as Martin Lewis, who says, some haiku hinge on a brilliantly original verb. Many are more quietly expressed. Many are verbless. And finally, Michael Dillon Welsh confirms my thoughts that if you use a verb, usually just one is best. Yay, Michael. Thank you. But what he also says is look for the verbs. And I'm going to rephrase this as look at the verbs. What are they doing in your verse? Are they functioning verbs? Are they performing another function such as adjective or noun? What do they bring to your haiku? And I thought I'd give you a few examples of the verbless verse. Tell me what you think. Do you enjoy a verb-free verse? At the end of the night, Snow Fox. Alan Summers. Crowded carriage, the breeze around a lone ragwort. Karen Hoy. Below the falls, a stepping stone just out of reach. Paul M. Spring thunder, from the centre of a pine stump. A pine. Naya. I know some of you really enjoyed the analysis of the verses in episode 13. I found a great analysis of this Heron's Nest award-winning haiku, so if you'd like to read it, the link is in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed these haiku and maybe are inspired to have a go yourself. I've been giving it a go this week with a mixed response. A wood pigeon on the roof tiles. Too early. So what's happening with the renku? Thanks to all of you who've sent me titles for the completed one, I'll make a decision by the first podcast of next month. Because what I've realised is that the title can give a whole new meaning to the renku. It's a hard choice. I'm also thrilled to be able to say that the next renku is already underway. I'll give you a new beginning in next month's podcast. Thanks to those who've already said they'd like to take part, but I will need more of you to take on a verse. If you'd like to have a go, send me over an email. Now, here's Norm Kecke. Remember Norm? We first heard from him in episode 4, the one about sport. Norm has a passion for coffee. Apparently he's tasting his way around the world. And maybe, just maybe, he'll let us know what his favourite is one day. He also has a passion for music. And it was the lyrics of music that brought him to the world of haiku. Norm likens writing haiku to writing lyrics. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about him, the link will be in the show notes. Here are some of his verses. On a run, man inside his car smoking, huffing and puffing. Dappled coffee leaves, flowers scent invites the bee, new budding cherry. Thanks Norm, pleasure reading your work. So that's it for today. Next time we meet, it's the podcast featuring you, writing on the topic or using the method synesthesia. Deadline for submissions is the 12th of August. You still have time, but don't forget, send your verses via email or I may not see them. Thanks so much for coming along today and listening. If you have some thoughts, please email me. It's always nice to know I'm not talking to myself. Until next time, keep writing. There are links to the verses I've read today in the show notes. If something's missing, just email me and I'll sort it out. Ciao!